And the reason I make this channel is because people like us take our lives at an alarmingly high rate. Like the average is 3% in America, our average is 30. That's not just a problem. That's a mental health crisis. So what was happening as I was looking at all these comments, some people, many people were asking, well, you look better. How did you do it? Like, yes, you really relate to us. You really relate to our mental health, our emotionality, even the addictions, even the life circumstances with the divorce and the difficulties in jobs. You look better. How did you do it? What? Or some people will just say, yeah, I totally agree that, we're like this. What do we do? And so I wrote down my process. And that's what I wanted to share with you all. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the next few weeks to talk about it because it's a five-step process. I call it, one second. If anybody thinks of a better name than what I have here, please feel free to let me know because I just call it the five-step change process for level two support needs neurodivergent people. That's just, that's actually a perfect name for this for autistic people, isn't it? Like it's like clear, descriptive. This is why a lot of my videos have like these really like almost definition-like labels on them because I guess it's my autism, I guess. I only found out that I was autistic 3 years ago. But I just like things that are clear. Clear. So what is this? It's a five-step change process for level two support needs for neurodivergent people. Okay. So what I'm going to do, and I should say this, this is also live streaming other places, places with content like this, like the big one. Anyway, so the reason I'm saying that is because on that one, I can actually share my notes, or it's going to sort of look like slides. So for those of you who are on that platform, because I can't say it, I'm not allowed to say it, or they choke me. Anyway, I don't even know if I'm allowed to use the word platform. Anyway, you're actually looking at my notes, which is like an outline for all this, I think. Let me make sure. And if anybody wants these notes, I gladly give out this stuff. Although I should say, the way I work is I change, the way I teach it. This is the first time I'm ever teaching this stuff. And so people kept on asking, how did you do it? What do we do? You look better, that kind of thing. And there was a process that I went through. It took years, but there was a process that I went through to survive that at a late age diagnosis of level two neurodivergent support needs after my story is that my wife of 25 to 30 years asked for a divorce and I lost my second career job, a job in my second career all on the same day. And that day was my 50th birthday. So needless to say, birthdays really don't really charge me anymore. Anyway, so, but that's the kind of thing, as I've said before, that people like us, level two neurodivergence, don't survive emotionally. Like, that's why we have such a high rate of, and I can't say that word either. And also, our average life expectancy is like 20 years lower. People like us. When I say people like us, I mean late diagnosed intelligent level two neurodivergence from the ages of 45 to 55 who go through a life crisis and lose everything. And when I looked it up, yeah, pretty much what I was reading, like your textbook. And so I survived. This was 6 years ago. And I feel like, I have hope in my life. And a lot of people here need that. Okay, so let me just go over this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the five-step change process, review it really quick. I'm going to go over step one, and then I'm going to do my somatic release meditation on guilt. And I'll explain why later. So I do my best to I do my best to answer the comments, but I have to admit, um, I yap a lot and I have a lot to share, so I might not be able to answer them all. I may be willing to maybe go through them at the very end of this after I do the meditation. So that way, because I do like to have this be interactive, but I have to do it after I do all the content. And I'm really, really sorry because of my distractedness, the constant rambling distractedness where my mind can go. I don't know where that comes from. I just never get to the content that I want to get to. So I gotta get through this. Okay. So first, let me do two things. One, I have to put this caveat out there. I am not a licensed professional of any kind. I'm not a licensed mental health professional. Okay, I could say this. One second. I'm an addictions recovery coach, is what I am. And I specialize in somatic release meditations. This entire five-step program story thing is based on my story. It's not based on me being a mental health professional, a research professional. I did do my own research in creating this, but it's all based on my story. And so people were asking, what did you do? How did you do it? What do we do? Okay, so let me also say, okay, who this program is not for. So this is like a five-step change process for level two support needs neurodivergent people, right? And neurodivergent is such a wide umbrella. There are high functioning neurodivergent people, and then there are people like me who are low functioning neurodivergent people. So, who is this program not for? Let me just start that out. Who is this program not for? This program is not for everyone. It's not for level one support needs neurodivergent people. So, when I say level one support needs neurodivergent people, these are people who are maybe having these problems in their lives, but they write in the comments, I just started exercising. That changed my life. One lady said, I just started using ginkgo biloba supplement and that changed my life. I just honestly found Jesus and that changed my life. One thing, usually, people say something like that. I just did cognitive positive affirmations and that changed my life. And so if you can do that, if you can use some kind of treatment-oriented prescriptive measure, and you can say that you changed your life permanently, meaning your emotions, any kind of addictions or behavioral problems are now managed, and you can function independently in society without help. That's the key. You can function independently in society, in our socio-economic society. And you can do this for a period of at least, in my opinion, 3 to 5 years. Why that long? Because I want to see what happens to you when you get fired. I want to see what happens to you when you get divorced. I want to see what happens to you when you lose a lot of money. You have to have resilience to adversity to do this. We don't. And so, if you are able to do this, this program is not for you. So if you're able to do exercise, diet, sleep, supplements, religion, psych meds, cognitive affirmations, all that prescriptive treatment stuff that you read out there, there's nothing wrong with that. If you can do it, in my opinion, and live independently out there, you're level one to me. Okay, so who is this program actually for? This program was written for people like me by me. And I found out there's a lot of people like me out there when I started putting up videos about what happened to me. So who is this program for? I'm having a really hard time because I only have so much space on my, one second here. I have to move this over. This program is for the neurodivergent population with level two support needs. What are level two support needs? This means you have tried the same prescriptive measures for years, many times in combination, but your nervous system, your emotions, is still dysregulated, and you still have compulsive behavioral problems, addictions, and you still cannot function independently in society. So we are people that need what what I call a biological co-regulator. You need someone there in your living environment to help you survive and thrive, or even just survive. So people like us, we're not independent financially in society. We're always needing help. We are also in the category of, I hate this term, but it's a term people understand, especially parents, failure to launch. We are that. So I work with parents of people with addiction issues, and these people with addiction issues are adult children who are usually like, 25 to 45 years old, and he's living in my basement. Or I'm always supporting her, and she's always needing help, and I pay for her apartment. That's us. Failure to launch. Okay. And when we do well, it's because we have somebody. When I did well, it was because my wife was there, and I had no idea. So I was misdiagnosed. I was not diagnosed. I missed the entire ADHD autism diagnosis until the age of 52. And this is pretty common because, one, I sound highly intelligent. And you could say, I guess I am. I was a college professor teaching art. But and many people like us are like this. We're very articulate. Somebody said, you have a great speaking voice. We can really, shine at a cocktail party or something like that, but we're not high functioning. You watch us go home, and my wife was taking care of everything, the bills, the car maintenance, raising the kid, house maintenance, taking out the trash, driving. I mean, she was taking care of everything. Think of me like the absent-minded professor who couldn't really do anything, couldn't really function out there, but he's really bright. We're book smart, but we can't parlay that into an independent, livable income. Okay. So another aspect of us is a lot of us, like me, may have addictions. Oh my goodness, my mother's calling. One second. I'm not going to answer. This has never happened before. Decline. Now she's going to say, how could you hang up on your 87-year-old mother? Oh, okay, the guilt. Actually, I'm going to be doing the somatic release on guilt, so this is perfect. And I was raised Catholic too, so I have a lot of it. Okay, so the other thing that we have is addictions, compulsive behaviors. So let me define what addictions are. Addictions are compulsive behaviors or substances or things that you do, but it's not based on what you take or the compulsive behavior you do. It's based on that when you do these things, they're destructive to your life in some kind of way. They affect your life in terms of your health situation, your financial situation, your legal situation. You might get DUIs and arrested, or your relationships. As a result of that, you get divorced. Your family doesn't want to talk to you. And so, addictions to me is when you have these things that you take or compulsive, or for me, it was a combination of things. For me, it was liquor, marijuana, spending, porn, like four. And sometimes I would use them all at the same time. And for us, the reason that we were doing this wasn't because we wanted to, that we were choosing to destroy our lives. I keep having to explain to parents this. We were doing this because we have level 2 neurodivergent brains with intense emotional dysregulation and impulse behavior control. And we were not built for a socioeconomic society of working full time, 40 hours a week. To do something like that, you have to basically have total control over your emotions or have very little of them. And then you can work long hours, not complain, and you will be rewarded in this society. If you can't work long hours because you're too emotional, too impulsive, have problems with your relationships, you will not. So people like us, we go in and out of jobs. We were usually either unemployed or underemployed. I was a drug counselor for 15 years and never moved up. Okay, so I'll talk about that. Somebody asked, how do I get diagnosed? I don't know if I need to get diagnosed. Okay. Another thing is, so there's three areas. Again, so who is this program for? There's three areas in your life when you're level 2 that are so severe you can't function independently. You need somebody to help you. One is your intense emotions. Your emotions are just way intense. Um, it feels like your emotions are like 10 to 20 times more intense than the average person, right? Who doesn't have this issue. If the average person without these mental health conditions starts, the baseline of emotion starts here, ours baseline starts here. it starts higher. We're just naturally edgy people. And then when we get triggered, stub your toe, lose your ATM card, it goes way up to a point where average people do not understand you. Why are you getting so upset over losing $5? We don't choose to be this way. So emotional regulation issues, executive functioning issues. If you have stacked multiple mental health issues like me, I'm ADHD, autistic, and complex PTSD, it will affect your executive functioning. What is your executive functioning? Your ability to problem solve and achieve goals in time. We're the kind of people that we have a lot of dreams, but we don't have goals. We want to do this, we want to do that. I want to open this business, I want to do that. I want to, one day I'm going to go back to school, one day I'm going to travel the world, and we never do it. And usually it's when you start to see us do it, the first sign of trouble, we back out and we have some kind of excuse. Oh, I don't have the money. Oh, not the right time. Oh, I could have done it, but it wasn't for my boss. If it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that. And then 20 years later, we look back and we've done nothing. So executive functioning issues cause this problem. We have difficulties thinking through problems. We make very poor choices. So this is sort of embarrassing that I could say this. Here's the kind of poor choices that I make. Trying to change a bulb in my hood range over my stove. I I don't know why I did this, but I just jammed a screwdriver up there and shorted the system out because I didn't turn off the circuit breaker. Executive functioning problems, not thinking through problems correctly. And so, of course, when I shorted the whole hood range out, what happened? An autistic meltdown, over emotionality, behavioral control issues for 20 minutes. And this is pretty common. So people like me, when I was living alone, when I was living with my ex, my wife, meltdowns would happen maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. When she left, meltdowns were happening 3 times a week, and it lasted for 18 months. Okay. So that's what I mean by level two. I am like poster boy for late diagnosed adult, highly intelligent, low functioning, needing a biological co-regulator, level two neurodivergent support needs. And the reason I make this channel is because people like us take our lives at an alarmingly high rate. Like the average is 3% in America, our average is 30. That's not just a problem. That's a mental health crisis. When I've described this outline to people, sometimes I work with mothers and they say, "Oh, you described my son and his father. Where's his father? He killed himself." And I hear that a good bit. So this is why I created this channel, because of the friends that I lost, who maybe could have been helped if they knew this. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the step one process. I'm going to go through the whole 5-step process. I'm going to review the whole thing, and then I'm going to go over just step one tonight. I'll try to answer your questions, but I'm going to do the somatic release meditation as a group. Okay? Um, okay, so step one. And this is all based on what I did. And the reason I broke it down to 5 steps is, saying something like breaking something down to 5 steps is very popular these days. 5-step process for, getting the love of your life, 5-step process for investing. So it's my 5-step process. Step one, become the expert of your own unique mental health. Understand your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors from a mental health perspective. Again, I'm only telling you what worked for me, and I will get to when people say, I don't like labels. I'll get to that. Step two, prioritize your emotional self-regulation over everything else. You probably notice here, steps 2 and 3 have these little asterisks there. Why do they have those asterisks? Because if you were to remember anything, if for some reason you were only to remember one thing from this entire talk, it's these two. So even if a person says, I don't know about my mental health, or I don't like mental health stuff, or I hear a mother saying, my son will never get a mental health assessment because he doesn't want to do that kind of stuff, I just say, then prioritize your emotional self-regulation over everything else. That is actually the key to this. Forget about autism, ADHD, complex PTSD, and knowing it like a scholar. Just prioritize your emotional self-regulation. When I say emotional self-regulation, meaning do what you need to do to regulate yourself so you're not in constant need of a co-regulator and manipulating them, taking advantage of them, leaning on them to the point where they divorce you like I did. It's okay to have a co-regulator, but you can't use them like that. You have to do it yourself over everything else. When I say everything else, I mean it. I was in the wrong job. So, because when I came home, I was drinking and using marijuana every single night. The first 15, 16 years of my daughter's life, she saw her father do this. I'm not very proud of that. I was in the wrong job. It's too stressful. I was married to a person who didn't accept me, even though she was neurodivergent. But every time my ADHD level 2 autism and complex PTSD reared its ugly head, we would get into a fight, you know. And so I learned, like everybody else, to mask it, push it down. And as a result of that, when my relationship ended, I almost didn't make it. And I'm very, very, very grateful. I understand the purpose of the marriage was to have my daughter, but I almost didn't survive. I almost became one of those statistics. And so when I say prioritize your emotional regulation over everything else, I mean your job, your partner. Now, some people may say, well, if you're already in a job, if you're already doing this, what the heck do I do? Well, usually, honestly, people like us, a large percentage of us, we're a failure to launch. Anyway, I mean, this is really for people in which they say, my son is 35 years old, smoking pot and living in the basement playing video games. And every time I try to get him to get him to have a job, he tries or he gets depressed or he gets fired or something. He just can't launch. So, when you say like, well, what if you have this working life? Then this program is not for you. This program is for when you can't, like I said, this program is for people in which you are not able to work independently in the economic-based society that we have out there. You need help. You're in a co-regulator situation. So if you're married, yes, maybe you need to take slower steps to make this change. But if you're not married and you are like in a situation where you're living with your parents or something like that, or you're just young and living with your parents, don't put yourself into a situation like I did, where I didn't know what was happening with my mental health. I was late diagnosed, lost everything, and now I have to rebuild it at the age of what? 55? That's how old I am. I have to rebuild all this now at the age of 55 after 30, 35 years of having a life that I thought was normal. Build it once. Our nervous system can't take building it twice. Believe me. Okay, so that's one thing. Step two, and then the other one that has the asterisk is step three. If you have addictive compulsive behaviors, which a lot of us do because we're so dysregulated out there. I mean, I want to say this. I want to say this. Um, when you do this kind of program, I really learned I don't even like to use the word addiction behavior because addiction to me just means you're in some kind of behavioral modification system and given a prescription of treatment activities to do. And if you can't follow it and get clean, then why can't you? And a lot of these places that use the word addiction and use just behavioral modification, they don't have a mental health component, or it's really, really poor. How do I know this? I've worked in places like this where they say they have a mental health component and it's really just a psychiatrist who comes there once a month and a art therapist in which nobody attends her appointments. And then they say, "Oh, we have mental health." Yeah. So I don't when you look at your behaviors from a mental health, neurodivergent, nervous system, executive functioning, brain point of view, what your brain is doing is just trying to self-regulate and survive in a world it wasn't built for. We're too emotional, we're too impulsive, we're too impatient. Consistently, over and over, you have executive functioning problems, and then we get too down on ourselves. That it does not sound like a person who can function consistently in our economic-based society with all the decisions you have to make. And so when you're in a world like this trying to survive, a lot of us have addictions, just like me. And so you do have to replace this stuff. So just because I say prioritize your emotional self-regulation over everything else, even your family, your wife, and your job, if you decide to emotionally self-regulate using addictions that are destructive to you, That's not what I was talking about. I'm not talking about that. You have to be honest with yourself, sometimes brutally honest with yourself, like I did, and change those behaviors out with harm reduction measures that won't get you into trouble. So understand this. Your unique neurodivergent brain, with its emotional dysregulation and compulsive, possibly destructive behaviors, is basically trying to self-regulate itself desperately in a world it wasn't built for. And so there's things that it gravitates towards naturally that get it into trouble, like illegal drugs, um, going crazy with gambling, alcoholism, or spending so much you are always in debt. And then there are things that it gravitates towards naturally that doesn't get it into trouble. So for me, when I switched over some of my emotional regulation activities to listening to music, which I love, and I have music, it's like music therapy. And then I really like to hyper focus on certain things as an autistic person. So I hyper focused on making espresso because I'm also ADHD. And so espresso is a stimulant, calms me down. So my morning involves, you know, fiddling and fighting with my espresso machine the best I can to make it like Italy or something. And then I sit down and I listen to classical or jazz music, and that's my meditation. But why? Because I can't meditate. I can't sit still. I'm ADHD. Too many thoughts. And then I start fiddling and jumping up and down in the air. Now, if there's somebody there who says, "Oh, I was like that, and meditation really worked for me, and that's all I needed," again, you're level one. This is not for people in what you do, like, oh, I did this and it worked for me. You're level one. Congratulations. Why am I saying this? Because I did all that stuff for 30 years. And I could tell you I was still emotionally dysregulated. It only worked when I was doing it, and I was still emotionally dysregulated. I was still having impulse behavior control, getting into arguments with my wife, and we were still having fights, doing all of these things for 30 years in combination sometimes. That's us. That's level two. When you're like that, you're level two. If you can do one or two of these things and your life changes and you just become a consistent, productive member of society, you can live independently or have a happy life, you're level one to me. Level two means you can't do it. Okay, a lot of us need to be on disability. Let me just put it that way. I tell parents this a lot when I see their sons and they're like me. What I tell them is, your son is trying to live an average life like everybody else with a brain that's eligible for disability. That's like trying to win a race and you're a paraplegic. Your brain can debilitate you when you're like us. So your son is trying to live life like everybody else with a brain that's eligible for disability. That's us. Okay, so you got to replace these addictive behaviors. Next is, some people may say, well, that just sounds like addiction switching to me. I worked in the addiction field. I've been in it for like 20, 30 years. I know everything that all the experts are going to say to me. So that sounds like addiction switching to me. And, people just go crazy with their harm reduction measures. That's why the step four is you need to use the proper support of people who understand you. You cannot afford to be somebody who doesn't understand your level two neurodivergence. And they just say things like, "I just don't understand you. Why can't you get a job?" People like that, when I talk to parents like that and they say, "I don't understand him, her, I don't understand why my daughter is like this," I tell them, it's not that you don't understand, it's that you don't try to understand. Try to understand what it's like to be us. Do the research. Put yourself in our shoes. And I always have to tell them, do you think we want to be like this? Do you think we choose to be like this every single day? Calling ourselves losers like this? Is this what we choose every single day? Try to understand us. So you have to find people who understand and accept you, even to the point where your therapist, you have to have the right kind of therapist. I've worked with therapists where they've said, "I just don't understand you." Or I've had therapists who said, this was great. When I was explaining, okay, this is very personal, but this is the way I am, right? I overshare because that's part of, I think, of my ADHD makeup. When I started to talk about my porn addiction to one therapist, she just went, "Ho, ho, ho, stop it, stop it, stop it. Oh my God, get out of my office. I can't hear this." And I was like, "I'm just talking about a sex addiction here. Oh my God. Okay, fine. We can't afford to be with people like that." So the therapist that I have, really wonderful person, she's an autism therapist. I've been diagnosed autistic only 3 years ago, and she's teaching me all about what it is to be autistic. And most importantly, she teaches me how to accept myself for it. You know, I was thinking like this and it's so different. Yeah, so you're autistic. Hmm. She's great. Okay. Step five. Okay. So after you do steps one, two, three, four, and this could take years, man. It took me, Jesus, 5, 6 years. It can take years to really figure this stuff out because you'll be doing a lot of different things. It could take years, but once you do figure this out, and the way I would the criteria that I would say that you have figured it out is that you are emotionally stable. You're emotionally self-regulated. You're not in need of a co-regulator all the time. You may be living with one, but you're not leaning on them to the point where they want to divorce you. Um, and so you're emotionally self-regulated. Now, when I say emotionally self-regulated, it doesn't have to be perfect. Forget the word perfect with us. Okay. If you can be calm, stable, emotionally self-regulated, I would say 80 to 85% of the time, that's good enough. Why? Because that'll make up for the 15 to 20% where you're not. Don't go for perfection. Don't make that inner critic, the autistic inner critic, your worst enemy. I did that for years and stuff. Just go for good enough. And good enough is 80 to 85% of the time you are emotionally self-regulated because that is the foundation of your life now, not the job, not the wife, not the family, your ability to emotionally self-regulate. And if it drops down to 50-50, not 80-20, then you need to batten down the hatches. You need to do something different because if it's like every other day, you're dysregulated terribly, you need to get it back up to 80%, 85% of the time. So that would be my criteria for saying what you figured it out. You have some kind of system. Once you do that, step five is then you rebuild all aspects of your life from the foundation of your emotional regulation system. I made a video out of this. For people like us, what society says to do to regulate yourself and be stable doesn't work for us. It's backwards for us. Because what they say is what? To have an emotionally stable life, you got to have the right, go to the right college, get the right job, marry the right person, buy the right house, live in the right neighborhood, have the right kid, have the right 401k, health insurance, and, floodplain insurance plan, and then you'll be stable. People like us, we can barely finish our education or keep a full-time job. We can't even make that foundation. We can't even build that foundation. And then when we fail, our emotions are so strong, we feel like such losers. I hear it. There are a lot of people on here. I mean, look, please help me. I'm crying. It doesn't, my life doesn't work. We can't do it this way. When I was doing this way, I was killing myself. I was, stressing myself out and drinking myself to death. I can't use certain words because TikTok will choke me. Anyway, so what we have to do, yeah, well, insomnia is actually a very strong feature of autism. I just don't sleep well unless I take medication. And I don't like taking medication because there's always a side effect like constipation. Anyway, so we just don't sleep well. You have to have like a sleep program. A lot of us take medication for sleeping, but that is important. So what we have to do is we have to make the foundation of our lives the emotional regulation system that you've created. And here's why for people like us. You don't realize how important it is to regulate your emotions on your own. If you cannot regulate your emotions on your own, you cannot have and maintain healthy relationships. If you cannot have and maintain healthy relationships, you cannot keep a job. You're not going to get along with your boss. You're not going to get along with your coworkers, which is why I was quitting jobs every 6 months, coming home to my wife, saying things like, oh, he was a jerk. Oh, they didn't understand me. Oh, or this one. Oh, they contribute to capitalism. Everybody contributes to capitalism. What are you talking about? We're the kind of people that come home with some kind of like, good excuse as to why we couldn't work that job or something like that. And it's because we did not make emotional regulation our priority, right? And so if you can't do that, you can't have good relationships or maintain healthy relationships, stable relationships, you will not hold a job. You cannot have and maintain a healthy marriage. You will get divorced, sometimes in and out of marriages. Your family may not want to hang around you. I know people who they're autistic, They're adults, and their adult children do not talk to them. When I say do not talk to them, not even Happy Mother's Day on a text on Happy Mother's Day. I'm talking for years. And some of them, when I've asked them, wow, it sounds like they live in another country. Where do they live? Oh, 20 minutes away. 20 minutes away. Yeah, they just don't talk to me anymore. Yeah. This is what happens when you don't prioritize regulating your emotions. You can't maintain healthy relationships, and therefore you can't maintain the things that we need to survive, a job and family. Right? So that's how important it is for us to do it this way. Okay. So let me go now to step one. I'm just looking at the time to make sure I can get all this stuff in because that was just the description of the overview of the steps and stuff. Okay. I know I say things that a lot of us can relate to me, what I'd say I know. And a lot of times people say, wow, for the first time, I'm hearing myself. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So again, this program that I did is based on me. I should say this. If there's anybody on YouTube, oh crap, I said the name. If there's anybody on the other thing, crap. Um, I can't get to your chat. I can't get to the chat. I can only look at the chat on TikTok. I'm sorry. Okay, I hope I don't get choked. Anyway, crap. Anyway, okay. I'll have to edit that one out. Okay. Post. Okay, step one, become the expert of your mental health. Okay, understand yourself from a mental health perspective. So this is where I will cover what I hear from a lot, especially from parents, even from other coaches. I don't like labels, Michael. I just don't like labeling people. You know, people aren't labels. Fine. They aren't labels. You know, there are people that believe that, and there are people that can survive like that. And this maybe this program isn't for you. If you're so strided on not liking a label, maybe this program isn't for you. Okay? So let's start with the first label, neurodivergent. Okay? It's because a lot of times when I describe what it's like to be autistic or ADHD, what I hear is this. Oh, I'm forgetful once in a while. Maybe I'm ADHD. Or I get anxiety. Maybe I'm autistic. And I say like, that's like a person saying, I had a beer. Maybe I'm an alcoholic. No, you're not. Oh, I drink beer. Alcoholics drink beer. You're not. Okay. So I realized when I say things like that, oh, I'm anxious and then I'm forgetful is my ADHD autism. And then people say, well, isn't everybody like that? Here's what neurodivergence is to me. It's not about the behavior. It's not about the act. It's about the intensity, severity, and regularity of it. You get anxiety? Do you get anxiety that makes you feel like you're falling off a building? That makes you brace your heart because it feels inside, the physiological response in your body feels like you're falling to your death. Is that the way you feel when you get anxiety? Because that's the way I feel when I get anxiety. When you say that, oh, I have a beer, maybe maybe I have this problem. Do you drink 5 shots a night and smoke pot like I did every single night for 15 years, doing not even able to help your wife? Is that so? When it gets to the point where your behaviors and the regularity of the intensity of it and the regularity of it is affecting your life in ways that you don't want, it's destroying your life. That's then you maybe know what it's like to be neurodivergent. Maybe. And so a lot of times though, there is that high functioning level one neurodivergent population, and they always are great at work. Actually, this is the population where being autistic is a superpower because we like routines, we love Excel spreadsheets, we love to make notes, we love to have order in our meetings, we love to follow rules. Um, that just makes us really great for working. And so you can be totally level one neurodivergent, and then when you go home, the only time you actually see a level one neurodivergent have a problem in their lives is usually in their personal relationships, actually. They still get divorced, they still have strained relationships with their children, they still have fights and arguments and things like that. I mean, I know people who are highly level one neurodivergent, kept a job all their lives, come back, beat their kids. That's not, well, it's not necessarily level one to me. So let me just explain that there's that population out there that they're level one neurodivergent at work, and then when you look at them at home, my goodness, every single one of your children hate you. You know, that's you can usually see that at home in their personal relationships. Okay, next. This program, like I said, is for people in which 'cause when I said this out there, when you're an adult, in your 50s and you lost everything and all of your behaviors is due to your neurodivergence and you didn't know it and you start to read all this stuff about yourself, and after going through 12-step programs, behavioral programs, treatment, therapy, your partner's mad at you over and over and over again, and you just can't seem to get it together, right? And to the point where you don't even know what's the use of trying because I'm always going to mess it up. If you get to that point in your 50s, and then you start to read about autism, neurodivergence, ADHD, you start to look at videos of this, you start to read what it's like and the features of it. This program is for people in which realizing and getting neurodivergent diagnosis and understanding it changed my life. And I'm not the only one. It was like this. When I made a video like that, there were several commenters. It changed my life too. It saved my life too. It changed my life too. If you're saying I don't understand how that would change your life, then maybe this program's not for you. This is for when you're reading about it, watching videos and understanding it for the first time, you actually have a therapeutic effect in your mind. Research lessened the depression and self-hatred I had almost immediately. Because it explained all of those failed behavioral modification attempts that I was doing. Okay, so for those of you who don't like labels, this is how important the label was to me. And if it's not that important to you and it didn't change your life and save your life, then maybe this program isn't for you. Okay, next. This is again step one, become the expert in your mental health. So do the research to understand your specific, what I call the terrain of your brain. Um, Experts in mental health are finding out that every brain is like a thumbprint. Every brain is different. So even in neurodivergence and even in ADHD people, even in level one neurodivergent people, everybody's different. We all have different hyperfocus things. We all have different features of ADHD. Some of us actually don't have problems with time management. Well, we have problems with distraction. So what I'm saying is do your research to understand your emotional triggers and your particular nervous system. If you have complex PTSD, I should say this, when you're autistic and ADHD and you're a child like this, one of the usual tertiary diagnoses is PTSD. And if you grow up in an abusive environment like I did, you end up with complex PTSD, in which basically your brain, complex PTSD to me is like your brain is constantly stuck in survival mode. It can't get out of it because it had to be in that mode growing up for the first 20 years of your life or something. And now you're stuck like that and you can't have relationships. Everything seems like a trigger to you. You seem like you're on, like everybody seems like they're going to attack you. You get stuck in all the patterns that you had to do to survive your abusive environment growing up. Do whatever they say, trust whatever they say, don't trust yourself, and therefore we're always feeling victimized by people. We're always feeling victimized by our relatives, our bosses, our spouses. That's a sign of, to me, of complex PTSD because we were taught to not trust ourselves. You know, we have things like rejection sensitivity where even when I have rejection sensitivity when I answer the comments, I see something slightly like not what I said, I just feel a little rise in my anxiety. When that was my ex talking about this stuff, it would feel like she slapped me in the face. And all she said was, "Oh, I didn't like that John Wick movie." And I'd feel like she slapped me. That's rejection sensitivity. Demand avoidance, that sort of goes along with rejection sensitivity. That's pretty much like if you tell me to do something, I'm not doing it. Okay, I'm not doing it pretty much because you told me to do it. And that is actually a sign of complex PTSD, that you're so resistant to doing things what people said because when you did it, you got hurt. And so lots of times, we're the kind of people like, use a raincoat because it's really raining cats and dogs out there. No, we're not going to do it. That's us. I mean, when I talk about demand avoidance, we do it like that. It's like that ridiculously demand avoidance. We'll just say the opposite almost to the point, or just for the point of saying it. Difficulty with uncertainty. I love this one. Difficulty with uncertainty and transition. Does anybody have that problem? Oh, it didn't quite turn out the way we were looking. It didn't quite turn out going to that restaurant. The vacation didn't turn out the way we wanted to. We're gonna have to change it over to here. We're gonna have to move you over to there. And then we have a meltdown. Anybody have that problem? Yeah, I have problems with uncertainty when I walk into restaurants. Meaning like wherever the waitress sits us down at, my daughter knew that's not going to be the place where dad's going to stay because if you sit him too close to the waitress station, the clanging of the forks, you can't stand that. Sit him too close to the bathroom, oh my goodness, the smell. Sit him too close to the door, the cold. Sit him too close to the where the chef is, the smell. I don't want to smell like anybody else's food. Where does your dad want to sit? All the way in the corner over there, and it has to be a booth. And if I couldn't get it, they would see me like fidgeting and stuff. We're not good with not getting what we want. Because when you have a brain like this, it's constantly in survival mode. Our brain is not telling us, "Oh, that's difficult." Our brain is telling us like somebody's pulling a knife on you. That's what our brain is giving us in terms of our emotional reactions. It's not giving us a slight annoyance. It's giving us a threat reaction like somebody ran into our room with a bat and stuff, like the baseball bat. That's what it feels like inside, right? So know also how your brain thinks and why. Like I said, we hyper focus on our little topics. People think you're not autistic because you don't have social anxiety. You speak a lot. You actually like public speaking. Yes, I do. But my daughter knows the autistic part of me because we hyper focus on topics. I can talk your ear off, but I can only talk your ear off on topics that I want to talk about. You start talking about, I hated these conversations in cocktail parties or when I would go to my daughter's high school, whatever, like PTA meeting or something like that. It would start something like, I heard this podcast on NPR, or I had this really good IPA. For some reason, like rich liberal people like love IPAs or something like India Pale Ale, and they'd always start the conversation that I had this really good IPA, and I was listening to a podcast on NPR, and I would just tune out, like, oh my God, I can't hear this. Or that they would say, and let me tell you about my investments. And so here's what we do. If you ever really want to see what an ADHD person is like who doesn't look like they have autism and they look like they're very social, we tune out in certain kinds of conversations and then we try to redirect the conversation to what we feel comfortable talking about. And so what I would do, I would go from IPA, NPR podcasts, and investments and veer it into mental health, behavioral health, and even spiritual awakening if I could do it. Or classical jazz music, movies, and espresso machines. But that was it, pretty much. Otherwise, I'm just sort of standing there. And my daughter knew this because she would say every time when we would go to things like that, could you see Mike, could you see Dad that when you started talking about your mental health stuff, everybody was looking at the floor and nobody was paying attention to you and they actually wanted you to stop talking? No, because one of the features of autism is we don't look you in the eyes. We're always looking down like this. We can't look at you in the eyes, some of us, right? Which incensed my ex to no end. She thought I was purposely ignoring her and not paying attention to her. You see how all this stuff, these little things, were described by the autism. I didn't even know. Here's another thing. Autistic people, our bodies sometimes do not tell us that we're thirsty. Does anybody ever have that problem? I had that problem. I stopped an entire family hike in Costa Rica. The entire tour group had to stop because I went into dehydration because my body didn't tell me to drink and stuff. And I didn't realize that's an autism thing. Because when I drink water, I have to drink a pint like right there, or else my body will not tell me. I've met other autistic people who passed out from dehydration because their bodies never told them to drink and stuff. I didn't know that. So know all these things about this is the kind of detail-oriented pattern recognition that you need to know about yourself. So when you do that, and you hold up the hiking group on your vacation tour, 20 people waiting for you, you don't beat yourself up. You're like, oh, my body didn't tell me that I mean, they may get mad at you, but you don't beat yourself up because you know that that's a feature of autism. So this is why you need to know this stuff, right? Why? Why do you need to know this? Because here's what I've also learned. When you have this kind of condition, if your out of control behaviors and addictions are bad enough, it doesn't really matter in the end if they understand you. You know, you can't be like that. This is why I say understand this in yourself because no one will do this for you. Because in the end, the person who really has to have the main compassion for you is yourself. Because if your behaviors get too much out of control, it doesn't matter if you married Mother Teresa or the Pope. I don't know why I mentioned Catholics, but it doesn't matter who you married. They may leave you. You will definitely get fired. Just because you have an autistic fit. But if it starts scaring people, it doesn't matter if you say, but I had a fit. It doesn't matter. So this is why it's important for you to know all this and do this research, because in the end, no one will do it for you. And if you end up in one of these kinds of behavioral situations and it's too extreme, no one will have compassion for you. I've seen it. I've seen it. And I have such compassion for us when we go through these things and nobody seems to care or understand, right? So that's why we have to do this. And so when you also do this, you really need to have a paradigm shift, how you think about yourself. You have to think about yourself. You got to change it from that society conditioned societal structure. Even I'll admit, even in mental health, even in behavioral health, even in coaching, the goal is when you really think about it, the goal is get the person functioning in the socioeconomic society that we live in now. That's pretty much what we try to do. So when we say, oh, they're better at what? They're better at paying their taxes, right? That's what we train. That's what sometimes really mental health is. So we're the people that don't think of yourself that you're a failure at it. The societal socioeconomic system and educational system failed us. Think of it like that. Because I'm not mad about it necessarily. You can't make a societal economic system and educational system that fits every single person. It's just I can't see how you could do it. It can only fit the median. On the bell curve, it can only fit the middle. There's always going to be outliers that just don't fit it. We're the outliers. That's us. So we got to change ourselves from what is your definition of success? This is why when I look at I'm dating now. And when I look at Match.com profiles, I'm like, I'm a successful independent woman and I really want next. I love to work out and wear Lululemon outfits and I'm working out with weights every single day and I love to like take vacations and up next because I'm not in this world. This is not my world. I'm an executive and I want an executive next. Like what am I looking for? I'm just looking for somebody who says, I like to drink espresso and listen to music. Oh, that's, but I don't see people like that. And so I just next, next. I really feel they should actually make a singles dating website for mental health people. But the problem is all the ADHD people will either talk over each other or not be on time for their dates. And then all the autistic people will have all of their triggers and they just will get too flustered and look anxious. I'm just joking. Anyway, we just don't fit that. Try dating in your 50s in society out there as a level two neurodivergent person. I mean, I know I can always tell like a neurodivergent person when they say things like, "This is not my planet. I need to be on another planet." I felt that way, or I was born in the wrong time period. That's what I would say. I was born in the wrong time period. Where do you need to be born? In a more peaceful time period. This is not my people. This is not my tribe. I don't belong here. That's when I know, like, oh, you might be autistic. So, okay. So, part of this paradigm shift is really important is you got to see your body as like a vehicle. You can't take this personally. Your autistic brain takes things personally, really, really bad. Meaning, finding this shit about you, that's what you call it. It's some more crap that I find out about myself that makes me even more a loser. I hear that all the time. And as a result of that, when I work with parents of people who are adult children who are addicts, they say, like, my son will never get an assessment because he doesn't want to know this stuff about himself because he thinks he's a loser already. And so you can't take this stuff personally as much as you can. You have to see this body as a vehicle and the brain as an onboard computer, like your car. And this is why doing the somatic releasing and possibly working towards something called an ego death, a spiritual awakening, or in psychology terms, depersonalization. These are all the same thing, where that emotional part of you inside that cares so much about living that life out there and you can't live it, you feel like a loser. That emotional part of you inside, it loses all of its charge. It just loses all of its charge and the emotional intensity of it just drops. It just goes down. That's when you know your identity is shifting over. You're having a spiritual awakening. You're having an ego death. The somatic release helps with that. When you can do that, you don't take things as personally. You'll find things about yourself and you will be able to say, that's my vehicle. It's not what I am, because you're not taking it as emotionally. When I say taking it personally, I really mean you're taking it emotionally, intensely. Doing somatic release work, meditation, spiritual work. That's why they say, find Jesus. It lessens the emotional intensity automatically. And that's why I do the somatic release work. Part of it saved my life. And that's what I hear a lot. So when I said, I mentioned like spiritual awakening in some of my videos, I was getting comments. Oh, that's me. I had ego death. I had spiritual awakening. I didn't know there's so many who had it. Yeah, there you go. Spiritual. I've gone through all that. There you go. See, I didn't, you know, I truly believe being raised Catholic. I just want to throw this out there. I might do a live stream about this. I was raised Catholic, so I know the Beatitudes from the Bible. The first one is, "Blessed are they who are poor in spirit; theirs is the kingdom of God." I truly believe that the Bible was the story of generational trauma, and they were talking about us. I truly believe that. So, level two neurodivergence is not a disorder. That's important to know. You're not a loser. You're not broken because it's not your purpose to pay taxes. When I work with parents and they say, I just need to get them functional. Can you just get her to work, please? And I can see like your daughter's ADHD, bipolar, and borderline personality disorder. She's living in your basement for a reason. You can see that she can't, right? And I've had people tell me, just get her functional. And that's when I sort of have to stop them and say, do you honestly think, sir, that everybody's purpose on this earth is to pay taxes? Is that what you think? Everybody's on this earth is to pay taxes? No. Then what? What is your daughter's purpose here? Go back to the Bible, because in it they describe generational trauma. We have a purpose when you understand it that's possibly, in my opinion, more important than that. Our purpose is to resolve the generational trauma in our lineage. All the trauma that was unresolved, passing down generation to generation to generation. It's already biologically proven fact. Look up the cherry blossom mouse experiment, and it's also found in humans. Trauma is passed down. And if people don't resolve the trauma, it gets passed down, and then it ends up backed up in one person who's so emotional, so impulsive, so addictive, they can't function. Why are they there on this earth? To resolve the trauma. We're the ones that take the hit for our family. We are the purge. Usually in a family like that, where there's a screw up like us, there's usually siblings who are much more functional. They can hold a job. They graduated from college, but my daughter can't. My son can't. What I tell them is, your other children are successful today because your son is not, because he's the one that took the hit for the family. Nobody asked us to be like this. Okay, that's why we're like this, because it's a biologically proven fact. Unresolved trauma contributes to people being born with autism, ADHD, bipolar, PTSD, schizophrenia, anything with emotional dysregulation in it. It contributes to it. It's already proven. So this is generational trauma. I had one lady say, I don't know about the generational trauma. I don't believe in the generational trauma thing, Mike, but I think it's the mental health piece. I think it's the mental health that's the problem. I had to tell her generational trauma is the mental health. They're the same thing. I wasn't mad at her, but people don't quite get that. Understand yourself from that perspective, because if you try to understand yourself from the perspective of, I have to be as functional and successful as everybody else out there, are you the kind of person at my age you look on Facebook and look to see if where your high school friends are and seeing if they're a doctor somewhere or they work for, a law firm, then you look at yourself. Are you the kind of person that does that? I did. You will feel like a screw up looking at yourself like that. Well, once I understand the generational trauma, I understood like God or the universe or whoever gave us a special mission to purge this. The somatic release and the spiritual awakening stuff helps. Okay. Next, and the last one is become the educated consumer of mental health services. Okay. Uh, Once you understand yourself, you have to partner with your providers. Like too many times I would hear, oh yeah, this doctor gave me a psych med and da da da. What happened? I didn't take it. I didn't like the side effects. So what'd you do? I never went back to him. This doctor just gave me this. A psychiatrist just gave me that. Did you work with him? Did you tell? No. So let me ask you this. If you ever went to a car dealership, would you ever not do the research and just walk into the dealership and say, I don't know what I want, just sell me something? No, you wouldn't do that. But this is what we do with our mental health. We do more research on a dishwasher buying it from Best Buy than we do understanding this. You have to become what they call an educated consumer, right? You would become an educated consumer of cars, of stereos, for me, of espresso machines. Become an educated consumer of your mental health. Otherwise, they're just going to use you like a guinea pig out there. There's like, how many meds are there out there? 50, 60 different meds? They're sort of guessing. I know, we know how long this takes to stabilize on our meds. So to collapse the time frame and not suffer as much, because some of us need meds. I'm on meds. I'm on 3 meds and stuff. But I partner with my provider and I target the features. When I went into my provider, I said, there's 3 problems that I have: executive functioning, impulse behavior control, and emotional dysregulation. Which one do you want to work on? The emotional dysregulation, because that's the one that's messing up my life the most. That's what we'll work on. I partnered with him. I don't just blindly go in there and say, prescribe me what you want, doc, and stuff. Do your own research on this stuff, or else someone's just going to sell you something that maybe you don't need. And it's worse, that can be harmful for you because they're not paying attention. And I've definitely seen that. They changed my meds. What happened? I relapsed. I've seen that as a drug counselor. And do your own research and explore whatever these prescriptive tools. Some of these tools will work for you: meditation, nature, being in solitude. Some of us are made for working with our hands. Some of us are made for being in nature. Some of us are made for listening to music. Certain things calm us down. Pets, pet therapy. You know, if those things work for you, research and explore them. Okay? This is what you have to do. When I say step one, you know, become the expert of your mental health, these 4 things on here that I just read over. If you want a copy of this, DM me, contact me, and I will somehow find a way to get it to you.